To be human is to feel. Humans are capable of processing and feeling dozens of emotions, each with their own unique way to guide our existence as a person, whether that be fear to protect us when we walk down a dark alley late at night, joy to satisfy us when we get to sleep in late, arousal to intrigue us when we see them anime titties on the timeline, or shame to reprimand us for what we do in the following 3 minutes after seeing said 2D titties. Annoyance is an emotion we can feel just about everywhere. No matter what you do or where you go, there's potential for something somewhere to annoy you. Now, seeing as this is a League of Legends video and I am a jungle main, how can we become the most annoying jungler? Seeing as there are no champions based on chipmunks, oranges, or the Rick and Morty fan base, we have to think a bit outside the box to determine what is the most annoying champion to jungle with. Now, I'm no scientist, but I put on my thinking cap and I sat down on an egg and guys, I think I cracked it. Let me play you 3 pieces of music. Tell me, which of those 3 is the most annoying to listen to? It's the third one, right? The one with all the dings? Dings? Singed? Singed! Flawless proof, Singed is the most annoying jungler. So, here's how to play him to be as annoying as you can be. But first, what does Singed bring to the table as a jungle champion? Well, we've already established without a shadow of a doubt, obviously, that he's annoying as heck to deal with. But outside of that, Singed brings a pretty tanky presence to the jungle. He's someone who's great at disrupting the enemy team, running around and soaking damage, so he buys a lot of time for your carries to do their job while providing opportunity to catch and flip the poor sods on the enemy team. He's also a fairly decent ganker, but beware the high mechanical demands that come with running up to someone and clicking fling on them. It is highly advised that before you go in on a gank as Singed, that you've performed all the appropriate wrist and finger exercises so as not to cause injury. If you did in fact encounter those enemy titties that we talked about before on your timeline, you'll probably be good to go here. And lastly, Singed jungle, he's not too shabby at clearing the jungle itself and staying up there in farm. He won't compete with the best, but he's good enough to get the job done. So let's get on with the meat and 2 veg, as they say. I'll show you 3 builds and playstyles today, and you can choose which one you want to go for, what flavour of annoying tickles your fancy, floats your boat, plucks your dingleberries, whatever. The first build I'm going to show you is, in my opinion, the most annoying to play against. Normally we'd save the best till last, but I'm feeling rambunctious today, so we're saving the best till first. Which I guess isn't really saving anything, it's kind of like saving a virginity by taking it up the chuff. Either way, I call this build the Cheejin build, named after the 2 fastest beings on this earth, the cheetah and a virgin in a brothel. This build makes you zoom like you never zoomed before. Really bloody annoying to play against since there's basically 0 counterplay when Singed comes speeding at you. It's a bit like the Skarner build, except instead of yelling "feel my sting" at an enemy and dragging them into their doom, you just kind of go yeah and tug them off, leaving them in a pile of goo. Here are the runes for this build: speed, damage, and more speed. Fun fact, I was actually going to call this build the illegal in a school zone build, but I've been informed that the implication of that name there, combined with the keystone of this rune page, doesn't necessarily lead itself to an image of speed. For your skin, 100% recommend that you use Mad Scientist, because mad spelled backwards is damn, and this build is so fast people will be like, damn, he's so fast. Your item build revolves around 2 core concepts, the first of which, you're faster than the enemy. The second, the enemy is slower than you. That's why Blue Smite, Righteous Glory, and Twin Shadows are your core. You'd also want to round off your build with Riley's for even more slow, and a Spellbinder for even more juice. Your first clear in the jungle as Singed can be a bit difficult. You'll want to get a good leash from your bot lane so you can be as healthy as possible after level 1. If you can't get a good leash, go start your chickens or something and kite as best as you can. Singed clears mostly revolve around your ability to kite with poison, so don't just stand there whacking things. You're not a goon at a hockey game, you're a delicate alchemist trying his best to survive outside his lab. Also, to save mana, you don't need to have your poison on constantly. It takes a little while before the poison drops off from your enemies. But also you can just pick up a Hunter's Potion as a solid option for those early game clears. Like I mentioned before, Singed is a scary ganker, and no Singed build is scarier than the Chijin build, where you pop Ghost, Predator, whatever else and just bomb it at the enemy. Since Singed can only run at people and not sneak up on them, he's better at ganking the longer lanes and top and bots, where he's able to chase people down a bit better. You can still do stuff in the mid lane though, especially if the enemy is pushed up. Try not to get into too many fights with the enemy jungler 1v1. It's like my dad always used to say, when you're playing Singed, don't fight the enemy jungler. Chances are, at least early on, you won't have the damage to take on whoever runs at you, so just do your best to beat the guy off. Then again, that advice might not be appropriate, at least that's what they said when they revoked my marriage counseling license. To be a proper Chijin, you'll need to be speedy. You are no naive Deoxys, you are not born speedy, so you need items. The later the game goes on, the more items you will have and the more you can exert your speediness. Following into the mid and late game is all about crashing your way into a team fight and doing Singed things. Legit just run at people and flip them. Put priority onto the carries with no escapes, and avoid things that will cop block you harder than My Little Pony bedsheets. Things like Veigar Cage, Anivia Wall, Server Lag, Mum Ganks, Aggie Girlfriends, or Nuclear War. Sometimes you won't be able to go on the offensive and you have to play a little bit back. That's cool too. Just make sure if you die that you take someone down with you, and when doing so, always give a thumbs up. It's not working. Your objective control isn't too bad either, especially that big purple worm, as you would expect for someone who makes a living yanking people off. You won't bring as much in the ways of damage to kill the Baron, but you can tank it while your team brings it down. A true Chijin thrives in these situations where you can turn from an objective and catch an opponent. Just wait for them to get a little bit closer, then you turn on the nitrous and you let them have it. Alternatively, you could also just, sit in the pit, slowly die, and then calculatedly secure the Baron with a cheeky post-mortem poison. It's probably a little bit better to not rely on that, but it does give you loads of style points, which is much needed in this build when your choice in skin involves a massive green dress and ginger hair. Yeah, sorry, that's a bit insensitive actually, isn't it? Pretty low hanging fruit too, yeah, so I take it back. I didn't mean to offend anyone who wears green dresses. Anyway, I said I got 3 builds for you today, and I think you get the idea of being super speedy, so let's move on to the next build. I call this one the Baby Where My Ice At I Need My Ice build, or the BWMIAIN. You know what, we'll just call it the Baby Where's My Ice build. I call it this because of how vanilla it is. This is the build you want to run if you're either just learning Singed jungle or you want something a bit more reliable so as not to annoy that one tryhard mate of yours who'll get aggy for you playing Singed jungle. Doesn't really make much sense for me to avoid being annoying in a video like this, where I'm showing you literally how to be as annoying as you can, but I mean, we all know that one mate's just got a small willy, so the least we can do is make him feel a little bit better about it and give him this little W to match with his other little W. Your rune page in this build is very similar to the rune page for the Chijin build. By very similar, I mean it is literally identical. Your skin though, just run the classic skin. This build is way too bland to deserve anything fancy. And your build is somewhat similar too. Even if you're not going full Usain Bolt, you're still going to want that Righteous Glory and Blue Smite. Biggest differences between this build and the other is that we're putting more of a focus on being tanky overall. So basically, any tank item that you fancy will work right here. You can chuck in some hybrid tank KP items as well, like Riley's or something like that. I probably don't need to go into too many details on your playstyle. It's basically all the same as I mentioned before, except you're tankier. This build is also the most boring of the 3, so I think we can just wrap it up right here and move on to our last build. This one's for those of you who like to live dangerously, who live life on the edge, who like things that go boom. For those who like to build AP. I call this build AP Singed Jungle. For your rune page, we changed things up a little bit, and no, I'm just kidding. It's the exact same crap as last time. Your skin, you gotta go with the Bane Singed. There's actually no reason for this. I just really like it. So I guess you could just run with whatever you want here. This build is a bit like an old man's neck. It's kind of flexible in the skin department. For items, you want the 2 APs. Ability Power and Anti-Penis Girth. The former is necessary for damage, the latter is necessary to allow you to run up to targets without having to waddle around like a penguin, which will significantly decrease your run speed. Runic Echoes, Sorcerer's Shoes, Twin Shadows, and Death Cap are your core items. Anything else, anything that gives damage, Malebolomicom, Leandries, Void Staff, Banshees on your Spellbinder, basically anything works. You can adjust your build to your preference and the demands within the game itself. For your strategy in the early game, you'll basically want to play the same as I've detailed before with the previous builds. I mean, at this point, you're still essentially just Singed. You haven't really walked down the AP brick road yet. However, once you got your Runic Echoes and beyond, your damage starts getting pretty nutty. Before enemies start getting tankier, you can essentially just play like an assassin. Just run up to people and pop them. Of course, with a build like that, the enemies aren't the only ones who can just blow up. You got to be careful you don't edge too much or you will risk exploding prematurely, and no one likes to see that. So play it a bit chill, respect the damage that the enemy team has, be the knobhead that Singed was born to be, but don't soak up too much damage because you definitely cannot take it. As trolly as AP Singed sounds though, I actually think it works pretty well overall if you don't fall behind early game. Later on, you won't really be able to contribute as heavily into team fights due to your tendency to die as soon as you come up against a group of enemies. So I'd recommend split pushing a little bit on him and catching people in rotations. So that's how you play the most annoying jungler in League of Legends. And this is where I would normally put my outro, but today I can't be asked.